I used to joke that finding photography was like finding Jesus. Yeah, it was really just making sure that she was okay with a lot of that. And so there was definitely like some push and pull on that. I remember Sports Illustrated called me for a game, it was a game at Alabama, and we were supposed to go to a wedding. And, in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I just won't go to that wedding. I just had to put some boundaries in place of like when I'm working and when I'm not.
Learning how to be okay with turning it off, and it's not an emergency. Welcome to Baby Bump and Business, the podcast exploring what it really looks like to build a business and a family at the same time. I'm your host, B. Troford Wilson, photographer, educator, and first-time mom, sharing the real unfiltered journey of parenthood and entrepreneurship. In honor of Father's Day, this special series highlights fathers in the creative and entrepreneurship space, diving into their experience with fatherhood, providing, partnership, and pursuing purpose while raising a family. Because this journey isn't just about moms, it's about the families we're building together. So let's get into it. Today's guest is Kevin Liles, an independent sports and commercial photographer based in Atlanta, Georgia. Since 2014, Kevin has photographed hundreds of assignments and games for national outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and Sports Illustrated. Other clients include New Balance, the Arthur Blank Foundation, Atlanta Falcons, and Atlanta United. And he currently serves as the Atlanta Braves team photographer since 2018. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be a part of this.
Yes, and I'm so honored to be able to have this conversation with you. So before we go into you talking about fatherhood, I want to dive a little bit into your photography journey. So what was that like for you, knowing that this is a space that you want to go into? How did you decide to start into getting into photography?
I used to joke that finding photography was like finding Jesus. I know that's a strong statement out of the box, but like it was like once I found it in newspapers working there. So through photojournalism, it was just, I had to do it. It was like, there was nothing else I wanted to do. I heard an interview with Martin Parr, the photographer, and he said, if photography is not like a disease, like you can't get it off of you, like you just got to do it, like you probably won't be successful. And I know that's like negative. Like I'm not going to think about it as a disease, but like, I don't know. I kind of, related to that because when photography found me, when I found it, this was like 2002. I just fell head over heels in love with it. There was nothing else I wanted to do. I got a job as a reporter. This is 2001, November of 01. I'll back up just a couple of steps before that. I won't bore you with the super long, when I got my first camera, all that. But anyway, 2001, before that, I was going to school at Valdosta State down in Valdosta, Georgia. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I did the next best thing and I quit college. Not really. That's not the best thing to do, but that's what I did. And so my mother was really on me about getting, a real job. I was working at like a wing shack down in Valdosta. It was like waiting tables and, like living the life, drinking, having a good time. And she was really on me about getting a job. And while I was in college, I had taken one hour journalism class, working for the student newspaper. And so I applied for this reporting position in Moultrie, which is about 40 minutes away, to the west. And I got the job. I could not believe it. And first, like newspaper job, obviously. And as part of that, being a reporter, general assignment reporter at a small newspaper, they give you a camera. There's a staff photographer there, but he can't shoot everything. And so this is a very small paper. There's 2 reporters, 1 photographer. It's probably 20 people total at the paper, it seemed like. But anyway, I had to shoot a lot of my own stories. And a friend of mine at Valdosta State became a photographer at a neighboring paper up in Tifton. And so he and I stayed friends, and I really just started developing a love for photography. And I just started picking his brain. And then, I just went all in. I was emailing photographer. I'll never forget. I emailed Vincent LaForêt at the New York Times, was asking him questions about his imagery, and he responded. And I was like, I emailed a photographer at the National Geographic, George, gosh, his name is escaping me right now. I've got a funny story about that later. I'm sure we might get into, but I said I was not going to make this a long, boring story, and here I am. But that's how I found photography, was way back then. I worked in newspapers for a few years, decided I wanted to go back to school to finish my degree so that I could get a job at a larger newspaper. So I left newspapering in 07, went back to school at Clayton State. I had ended up at the Griffin Daily News by that point. And so Clayton State was the nearest college. I quit the paper, went to school at Clayton State. While I was there, while I was in school, I found out a Sports Illustrated photographer had moved to the area. Bob Rosado had moved to Fayetteville, Georgia. And gave him a call and told him I'd like to assist. And, I started assisting him basically like full time. And so that was a whole career in of itself in like 3 to 4 years of, assisting Sports Illustrated. And I graduated in 2011. There were no jobs to be had especially in newspapers. The Great Recession had happened. I mean, it was just not a great time to be looking for a job in photography, much like today. And so I started freelancing. I didn't have a family. I didn't have much in terms of overhead. I was just like, I'll just start doing, because I was applying for jobs. I honestly was applying for jobs at like Staples and like Home Depot, not like the corporate level. I'm talking about like door greeters. Like I just need a job. But my references were like the director of photography at Sports Illustrated. And they were like, what? Why are you? I was like, I just need a job. So long story short, I just started freelancing and it worked. And there's a whole lot that's happened between then and now we'll get into, but that's the short and skinny of it.
So while you're freelancing, at what point did you meet your now wife?
So I met her in 2015. I had moved to Atlanta. I met her on Tinder, believe it or not, when Tinder like... It's wild. So yeah, I met her back in 2015 when I had moved to Atlanta earlier that year and was free. That was like a really big time for me in freelancing. I was doing a ton of work for like the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, just a lot of editorial work, which is what I came from, which is, I love doing that kind of work. It's just not a whole lot of it left anymore. But yeah, that was 2015 when I had living down near Candler Park. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you guys started dating.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you start thinking about marriage? And in those thoughts of those conversations, what did you have to think about in terms of your career as well?
Yeah. So, it's a lot to think about when you start thinking about like, potentially having a family, getting married, buying a house. And so things were going pretty well for me. I had a lot of commercial work as well. Like, work was not a problem. And it didn't feel like it was going anywhere. It felt like it was, and it did. It's been, I want to brag, but it's worked. You know what I mean? So yeah, for that, it was just making sure that she was okay with the fact that this is my life. Like I'm a freelancer, I'm independent, schedule is wild, and obviously we figured out how to maintain that with having kids and, been a lot of changes. It was a way more fluid and my schedule was volatile, if you will, because like, news is a fast moving thing. It'd be like the New York Times would call me and say, hey, we need you in Alabama tomorrow. And can you stay until Friday? So like, and that was like so exciting to me. Like and to this day, like, I mean, it's different now with kids. Like it'd be hard to like leave, but it would still be exciting to think about to like just head out of town, because a lot of times you go to these like small towns, work on these stories. And it just felt like, I know it's weird, but it felt like so exotic being in a small town, documenting things. And I grew up in small towns. So it felt, I don't know, it's just a lot of that work was really, really cool, but I'm digressing. But yeah, it was really just making sure that she was okay with a lot of that. And so there was definitely like some push and pull on that. I've got a funny story if you got time.
Yes.
It's still kind of a sore point. Sometimes it's funny now though, but I was getting work from like a lot of different newspapers, magazines, whatever. And I remember Sports Illustrated called me for a game at Alabama, and we were supposed to go to a wedding. And, in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I just won't go to that wedding. Like, it's fine. Like, that's, you know what I mean? That's life. You know what I'm saying? This is a big job. And it really was a big job because it's Alabama, and Alabama was popping at the time. And so like anytime, shooting for SI back then is a little bit different now. SI is not quite what it used to be, but you go to these games, it was still the same thing though. Like you would shoot a game like that, knowing that those images might be used for a cover later, because it didn't matter who they were playing. You're shooting the number one team in the nation. So like you need to get a lot of stock imagery that they can, you know what it's like. We'd shoot for the Falcons. They could use those things for forever. So I was like, I took that job and I told her about it. And she was like, there's a wedding. And I was like, I mean, I know, but like, this is Sports Illustrated. What are we talking about? And she was just like devastated. And I was like, wow, okay. Like that's when I, really started like the rubber meeting the road on relationships and like freelancing, So like, and I'd already taken that job, so I had to take it. Like I couldn't call back and say, I'm sorry, my girlfriend's mad. like, so
Right.
I took it, and it was a bone of contention for a little bit, it was kind of, it was hard, but I did get a cover.
I mean, everything that you were hoping would happen happened.
It did. But the cover really didn't help my cause. Like it still was like, so like, this was important to me. And she had a point. Like obviously, it going back, if I'd have done it over, I would have like had more of a conversation about it rather than saying, hey, I took this job. I would have been like, hey, this is really important. Here's why, et cetera, et cetera. Those things can just get off the rails when if you don't approach that kind of thing properly, and being in a relationships is compromise and all those things. And so, yeah, I found out in that instance, like how hard that can be when, you're trying to have a life outside of work, cause like that's all I wanted to do was go shoot assignments. Like that was just like in my blood, I was just like, I couldn't wait for the next one. It was such a thrill, and it still is, to go and shoot something and turn it in and see it get published was, it's one of the most amazing things. Like I love it.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we often don't talk about, especially as freelancers, where the goals that we have placed on ourselves or the goals that we have set for ourselves, it is hard to speak about that with someone who may not be in that industry. And especially
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to dating or with your spouse and helping them understand how important these opportunities are, although it may not seem that important to them if we're not communicating how important it actually is
Mm-hmm.
to us. And I think that's something we don't, like you said, we don't often talk about. Like we all love getting assignments. If we can get assignment to go somewhere, it's hard for us to have to ask permission or ask
Oh,
our spouse, like, "Hey, can I do this job?"
yeah.
Before that, it's like, yes, I don't have to ask anybody.
Yeah, yeah, like yes, 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 yes. It is a difficult thing to navigate, because you don't want to be rude, but you want to say, can't you understand this is like the most important thing to me, like outside of you, but like this is like who I am, like this is really not up for negotiation is what you want to say, like, but you don't want to say that because it's not really true, but you kind of feel that way. You're like, this is, if you don't want me to do that, then what are we doing? And it's not that she
Right.
don't want me to take pictures and at all, at all, at all. It's, I don't want to paint it like that, but you know what I'm saying? It's, you're right though. If you don't lay it out, like this is very important to me. Like being able to take a job like that, and even like if the SI called right now and said, we have a game on Saturday, there's no football right now, but et cetera, I'd still have a hard time saying no. I'd be like, hey, can we make this happen? Yeah. But you're right. Having
And
those conversations up front is key.
right. And I would even say, like, even for me now going through this motherhood journey, I've had to ask permission for almost every job I want to take now. And that's been one of the hardest things to accept, where it's either I'm not necessarily asking permission, but it's like, okay, if I take this job, what are we doing
Mm-hmm.
with our child? Can you watch her? If not, can we find a babysitter? Can we
Mm-hmm.
ask somebody? And it's like now we're asking for help or we're asking all these other people, where before that it would be like, all right, babe, I'm out. I'll be back in a couple of days. See you later. Love
Yeah.
you. Bye. It's like the
Yeah.
asking is the hard part,
It's as I'm sure it's how you phrase it. It's how you present it. And you're right. I mean, if you say, hey, I'm leaving, it's like, whoa, what do you mean? Okay, well, I guess I'll just take care of the kid, like, et cetera. So you've really got to be intentional about how and caring, and not, you're right. But it is strange for us who are like wild horses, having to like, hey, can I go? I really want to go out of town for a week. Can I go?
Right. Like I remember when after I had on my daughter, 3 weeks later, I got hit up by ESPN to do a job in Alabama. And
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, I'm going. And my husband's like, what? He was like, you just had the baby. And I was like, I need to get out the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going, and I'm like, I'm taking my sister with me and I'm taking the baby. So we're making a little fun road trip, but I'm doing this job. And
Yeah.
he was not happy about it. I did the job anyway. We came back fine. And I felt staying because I'm like, I get to be myself again. I have a
Yeah.
camera. I feel good. But it, like you said, it's like just figuring out like that framing. And even now you have to communicate a little bit more now and explain a little bit more how you're feeling, why you're feeling this way, and why I want to say yes to this job and why I want to say yes to this opportunity.
Yeah, because like you said, it's like who you are. Like you get down to like, it's like your identity. And that's really hard to explain to someone who's not in that world. Cause it's like this, like I just said, it's like, this is who I am. Like, I don't, that's my joy. And you don't want to say it's everything because it's not, but like, you feel so passionately about it, and the other part too is like, news assignments pay a fraction of commercial work. And so that's another layer to it is you're like, hey, I'm going to go out of town. And you're like, well, you're going out of town for a few $100s a day. And you're like, well, I mean, that's what it is, and it's almost like you do those jobs, like the news that I don't do a lot of them anymore, but like the news ones would like feed my soul, like going out and doing this feature work. And so I used to joke about it. I would say my commercial work subsidized my editorial work. Like the commercial
Right.
work would pay for me to be able to take these news, because you can't make a living doing news work. Like
Right.
it's a few $100s. You know what I mean? If you do, maybe you get 2-3 days in a row, it's still, I mean, it's not, you can't make a living, a decent living. I mean, you could
Right.
live poverty line maybe, but so anyway, that's another layer to it too, is relationships, money, and we're paying bills, and like, okay, this isn't as lucrative as other jobs, but it's like you're going to take it anyway because that's what you love doing.
So let's talk a little bit more. So now that you guys, okay, so you guys, I love that you shared that story, because I think that's something that we often don't speak about when it comes to dating a freelancer. And so now that you guys decided to go on this journey of marriage, what did the conversation look like in terms of planning for wanting to start a family, and what that needed to look like, or what sacrifices you would have to make in order to have that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, we just sat down and talked about, like, and it wasn't, I mean, once you're pregnant, it's like everybody locks in. Like this is, you got to, got to take care of business. So it's just some conversations about like, okay, well, while we're going through this, I will do X, I will make sure this is happening. And that kind of like caveman thing kicks in, where you're just like, got to provide, got to, got to make sure, things are taken care of. So yeah, it was just making sure that she was fine with the baby. Now we have two, but like, letting her know that I'm doing everything I can, and I'm going to be at home as much as I can outside of that to help with that journey, because she was still working. Well, I mean, obviously she had time off, but like, it's a few weeks, 6 weeks, maybe. I can't remember what, if it was, whatever it was, it should have been like quadruple that. But yeah, she's back to work, and then it's, helping with as much as I can. But I had the Braves contract by the time we got married. And so that's really was what's leveled out a lot of stuff for me, because it's steady. It's like, I know that's when I have that contract, and then like, it's not as volatile. If I didn't have that, I would have more than likely had to get a job, like who knows, like doing something, especially because of the pandemic, of course, there was no baseball for the first, I don't think baseball happened until like May or June. There's normally 162 games a year. I think there was 60 games that year. Yeah. So it was a very, very truncated season. So yeah, but I'm just saying all that because like, things had, all the freelance work wasn't as important in making sure the bills are paid. You know what I mean? As
Right.
before that, it was just like, I mean, I was getting jobs. There was no problem getting to work. But it is, it's like, you have a couple months of no jobs or very little jobs, you're starting a little worried. So the Braves having that like really leveled things out for me. So it wasn't quite as chaotic, if you will.
Mm. So with having the Braves contract and going through having your first two kids, what were the things that you had to start negotiating, or did you have to start setting any boundaries so that you're able to still show up as dad and husband when you came home?
Well, the first thing I had to do was like start eliminating all of the, I don't want to say crap, but like stuff, like doing stuff all the time, responding to emails. I just had to put some boundaries in place of like when I'm working and when I'm not, you know. And so like I would get emails for stuff while I'm, not working, like not at a game, not doing this. And I just, there's some days I'm off. And so I just would not respond to those. And it's hard to do, or respond quickly and say, hey, I'm out of the office, be back on Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. So for me, it was just trying to not have that on all the time mentality and quell some of that fear I had of like, if I don't answer this right now, the whole world's going to end, or my job's going to go away, or, whatever. So that was probably, and I'll still work on that. I'm a lot better at it now, because I'm easy to say, look, I'm not working right now, or I'm, I don't say I'm not working right now. I just say, hey, I'm not at the office, or, I'm not, I'm out, right? Today's my day off, et cetera. We can handle that. Obviously, if it's something needs to be handled, but that's very, very, very rare. So it's just kind of handling stuff like that, or requests or emails from just anyone, really, just putting or editing any number of things. That's the problem with freelancing, is there's always, as a business owner, period, there's always a billion things that need to be done. And without intentionality on it, like this, this is my office and workout room, everything down here. I'll come down here and I'll just piddle, I'll just like answer an email and I'll end up over here. And then like 4 hours have gone by and I was doing stuff, but like I didn't really move the rate or, move the needle on a lot of stuff. It's just kind of like busy work. And so that's what is so difficult about it is feeling like you're caught up enough to give yourself a break to enjoy tomorrow's day off. I don't know if I feel like I've just kind of meandered all over the place here, but that's the struggle is turning it off enough or being caught up enough or whatever it is to be like, okay, there's always going to be work. There's always going to be stuff to do. It's never going to go away. So you're going to have to just be like, pause for now and we'll get back to it. I always felt like I just had to be doing something to like, satiate that urge of like getting it done, like getting closer to finishing X, Y, and Z. Cause I have 5 projects right now, at least, if you consider everything, like an editing project or this, or I want to clean this part of my website up or whatever. I worked on LinkedIn. Yeah. Here's an example. Yesterday I came down here without an agenda, just going to get some work done. Ended up on LinkedIn and I needed to do it. I really need to do it. I spent 3-4 hours on LinkedIn. And I was like, damn, all right, well, there goes that day, which is fine. I got something done, but there are way more pressing things right now. But, I digress. But that's the struggle is trying to, have time off and not feel like you got to do something at all times.
And I feel like I think that's one of the hardest things as a freelancer, because even when you do get that time off, your mind is still working, right? Like your mind is still thinking about all the things that you can be doing, should be doing, adding to your to-do list, subtracting from your to-do. Oh, do I need to do this? No, I don't need to do this. And even when you're trying to be present, it's like you're halfway present because your mind is still focused on other things and still trying to figure out how can I turn you off so I can really be 100% present here. And I feel like that's hard for freelancers or even just for people, period, when you're in this new chapter or this new season of parenting, where it's like, okay, no, I want to be present. I want to enjoy these moments and I want to turn my brain off from thinking about everything else that may be pressing, that may need to get done, but let me enjoy these moments now.
Yeah. It's giving yourself permission or saying that it's okay. Like it's not, something that helps me a lot. I saw this on a social media post and I tend to be someone who's in a hurry a lot, like getting the kids to daycare. I'll just be like, oh, we got to go. Come on, or whatever it is. I'm like, oh, and I saw this post. This woman was like doing the same thing. And then she stopped and she said to herself, this is not an emergency. And then she started walking slower. And then it was a skit, she did several of those scenarios where she's like tying her kids' shoes or like getting dinner ready or something. And she's like, this is not an emergency. It's like a nervous system reset in a way. And I'll find myself saying that to myself a lot. This is not an emergency, dude. Like it's what's the worst thing that could happen if this is not done? And you're like, okay, well then you think about it. Oh, well, that's not an emergency. But I treat, and of course you can get real deep psychologically of where that comes from as a child or whatever, having parents that are like, expect a lot of you, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't matter. What matters now is trying to deal with it. So I just tell myself that a lot. This is not an emergency. And that helps tremendously. I also heard something on a podcast, or it was a clip we all watch clips now instead of full podcasts, unfortunately, but there was you know what I mean? There's a lot of clips out there. And I think it was Dave Ramsey and another guy, another like thought leader, or whatever. And they was talking about how there's no such thing as work-life balance. His kids, like work was a part of life and life was a part of work. And so it was like this kind of marriage, if you will. And his kids understood that like dad's working and sometimes that bleeds into life and life bleeds into that. And it's almost like that is maybe, I'm not saying that, I just heard this the other day. I've been thinking about it because like I do think about this a lot. Is there such a thing as work-life balance? And a lot of people who are really successful say that's a myth. There's no such thing. Like either you go all in and you get it done. Well, because I'll tell you, when I first started being a freelancer, there would have been no way. It would have been very, 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 very difficult for me to try to, quote, balance like kids, family, all that. Like, thank God, like I had all this going before this the only way it happened, So, I try to, is that even possible? I try to, like we talking about, try to cut it off so that you can pay attention or be present, but we can get into the phone. I think the phone is probably the biggest problem with that. That's what, anyway.
And
I could talk for.
And I think, like you said, like the phone, I feel like, especially because we have access to everything on our phones, right? Like before, to check
at all times,
to check email, you had to go onto a computer. You had to, download to the internet. Where now everything is really right there, and you feel like, okay, If I get an email, I need to respond right now. Oh, I got a message on Instagram. I need to respond. Oh, I didn't do this post. I didn't go on LinkedIn. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. You always feel like there's a need of something to do when in reality, like you said, it's not an emergency, but we feel as if it is because it's right there on our phones. We're getting the notifications. It's messing with our anxiety because we're feeling like, okay, I have to react to it right now because I received it, and being okay with, or learning how to be okay with saying, turning it off. And it's not an emergency. I can wait. This can wait. This can wait till tomorrow or wait till the day later.
And there's something that I think is helpful is to say, this is hard. This is really hard for me to do. I don't want to sound like I got this figured out. If I can say, I'm going to do, let's say it's respond to Instagram messages. And you could say, I'm going to do that tomorrow at 2:00 or like whatever. And then handle all of those things. Have you ever read that book, The 4-Hour Work Week?
I am. I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this book is all about just optimization. It's too much. Like it's too much. Like it's to the nth degree of like optimizing everything to where you do a whole week's work in 4 hours. Like this guy, Tim Ferriss, he's got a great, great podcast, got all kinds of stuff. He's a really, 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 really smart guy. And I love a lot of his stuff. And I think even now he's like, I probably went too far with a lot of this stuff because he made life not enjoyable because it's all about like optimizing everything. But one of the things I picked up from that book was like, you compress everything into one, like if you want to answer your emails, you do all your emails at one time. And that's when you do them, and you don't do them again until this next time. So it's not this free for all. It was like, okay, I'm answering emails at 10 a.m. and at 5 p.m. today, and that's it. I'm not doing, and that creates it all. There's several things that does. Number one, for you, it creates mental space to be like, okay, that goes in that bucket. I'll deal with that bucket later. Right. Secondly, it puts a little space between you and the people having access to you. And so you're not being manipulative or like saying, I'm not doing that. You're just like, I'll do that when I have time. And I'm doing that. Obviously, if it's an urgent email, that's a different situation. Like, hey, please respond ASAP. We need your headshot or whatever. But for the most part, that stuff can wait till 5 p.m. today. And so then that's what I'll catch myself, trying to not respond immediately so that I can like, okay, wait, does this need, again, this is not an emergency. I can put that off till later. Something I try to do. It's hard. It's really hard.
I try that. That's actually a really good tip. I like that idea. Like planning out, these are my only times where I view and respond to emails. I like that. I think I'm gonna take that.
And you can do that with like
everything.
Everything. You'd be like, blog posts are going to happen Tuesday. Obviously, freelancing screws all that up. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and one thing I tried, it fell apart with me, is I tried to like think of days as I kind of like color coded them in my brain. Like Monday would be green, and that would be I would handle all my money stuff on Monday. And then Tuesday would be like, blue. Like the colors don't matter, but like then I'm doing all administrative stuff, and then Wednesday, like I tried that. It looked great on paper, but it didn't work for me.
So with you having 2 children and still traveling for work, and working in sports is something that is very hectic. The schedule is pretty crazy. How have you guys been able to find balance, or what does that look like in terms of communicating to still be able to do these travel jobs, do all these jobs, working all these hours, but still being able to show up at home?
Yeah. So the good news is I don't really travel anymore. I do every now and again. I don't travel with the Braves 99% of the time. Like me and my wife joke, because number one, like I said, there's 162 baseball games a year. So that's 81 home games. That's already like a lot, right? It's like I'm in the middle of a homestand right now. We've got today's game and tomorrow's game. Then I'm off, luckily, for like 12 days before they come back. But then it's another like 7 games in a row, right? So what I was going to say is we joke about like if I had to travel with the team, we wouldn't be married because that's insane. I don't want to travel I mean, it's fun sometimes, but I would not want to travel on a regular basis, like every homestand, every other homestand. That would just be insane. So it's not a whole lot of travel anymore. Those jobs are few and far between, which is fine.
How did you negotiate that? Like, were you traveling before you guys got married, or?
I never really traveled for the Braves. The only time I travel for the Braves is for playoffs or like a big story. Like the last time I traveled during the regular season, I think it was 23 or 24. We had a pitcher who I think it was 24. He had been injured for like a year and a half. It was like a long recovery process, and he was like a big time pitcher. And so he was making his first game back was in Oakland. And so I flew out there and shot 1 game and came back. So that was, I think 23 or 24. But really, if we get down to toward the end of the season and we're close and we're in a clinch scenario where we're going to clinch the division. Obviously if it happens on the road, that's best. Sometimes that happens. I mean, if it happens at home, that's best. But when it happens on the road, sometimes I'll travel for that. Like I went down to Miami a couple of years ago for that too. So yeah, I mean, the travel is not, it's minuscule. When playoffs get here, I tell people, so baseball, I don't know if you know how much you know about MLB, but baseball runs from like April 1 to like the end of September. So it's like 6 months solid. So generally speaking, any baseball in October is playoff baseball. So everybody has a joke, October baseball is the best baseball. So, and then the World Series, if it goes to all the way to game 7, that sometimes is like November 1 or 2, right? That's how, so it's a whole month of just playoffs. So I'm telling you that to say that like when October gets here, I'm like, leading up to it, you really don't know, unless you just have a terrible season and you get eliminated quickly, you don't know what that's going to look like. So October is always just like, keep it open. Yeah. I'll tell people like Falcons, for example, I'll say, it's possible I'm available. However, I don't know. And it's possible that they could be on the road early in the playoffs. And sometimes I don't travel for the early series. So anyway, long story to say that like October's always like, you just never know. It could be, we won that World Series in 21. It was solid. Like I was shooting a game. Baseball is insane. Like every game felt like a Super Bowl. And so like you would be a game and then a game the next day. And then you travel to another city and then a game and then a day off and then a game. And it's insane how much it is. You know what I mean? Like the intensity of it for a sustained amount of time for a month. So by the time you get to the World Series, it's the biggest game you're ever going to be a part of. And you are as tired as you've ever been. I mean, the players too, like they've been playing, everybody is like exhausted and it's like, here we are, it's World Series.
We're still doing this.
Yeah, we're still doing this. It's the most important game of your life, but you're exhausted. So yeah, travel is not much. Obviously October is, and by the time October gets here, if I am going to playoffs or, the Braves are in playoffs, I mean, Tina's just kind of like bracing. My wife, Tina's just like, okay, trying to get help from relatives or whatever to mitigate trying to be so dang her being exhausted. It's a long season for her too,
Right. So if you have any advice to give any freelancer or any person in this creative field who is about to go into this parenthood journey, what advice would you want to give them?
Like we talked about, just having as much conversation as you can and being open and honest about how you feel about it, about the work with your significant other. That's the biggest thing to me. What does it look like when the work's not coming in? That's the pressures that are hard to deal with. The work's not coming in. How long is it before the non-freelance spouse is looking at you like, hey, buddy, it's time to get a job. We got some mouths to feed, So like, it's those kinds of things that you got to like navigate or talk through ahead of time as much as you can, because it's not only about the time, it's about the money too, right? I mean, we got to pay bills. We got to keep this household going. So it's like, obviously if you healthy relationship, you both know you both are locked in and you trust and all those things, that's, just obviously general relationship stuff, but like being freelance is difficult. And the conversations of, hey, I got a call for a big job that's in New York tomorrow. When that happens, what is that okay? Like that's going to happen, And so, yeah. Cause there's a lot of feelings involved with all that, I mean, if a spouse says like, no, you can't go, like that's heavy, right? So then you've got to figure out, or not, it's not like they're your parents saying, no, you can't go, but you know what I mean?
Right.
But, navigating that when they say, I don't think this is the best for us for you to go right now, So, I felt you just take a deep breath.
I did like, oh, that's.
I know it is. I know. You'd be like, I'm going. We'll figure it out later, but I'm going.
That part.
Yeah, I know. That's, and we have outside of that one Sports Illustrated assignment. And like I said, we still joke about it, but yeah, it's really just having those, like, it's got to be like gut level honest. Like, okay, look, when I'm only bringing in $1,000 one month, it's going to be okay. There's going to be low months. There's going to be slow months. There's going to be dips and, whatever. So it's just being prepared for that as best as you can, because like, being an entrepreneur is a big umbrella, and a lot of businesses, I know all businesses ebb and flow, but like if you've got a laundromat or something, you can kind of like expect some level of income, but like in this creative field, like it could just go away for 2 or 3 months. You
Mm-hmm.
could just be, or very little, then you start getting antsy thinking about like, man, should I start doing weddings? Should I start doing, you're like, what should I got to get some, what am I going to do? So that's individually, that's like one of the hardest parts is like staying the course, and trying to put your money back so that when you do have a slow month, it doesn't hit you as hard, as the good months, because that it's very misleading. You have a lot of good months in a row. You start thinking this is how it's going to be.
Right.
And it's rarely ever going to be that forever. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. Awesome.
I have fallen victim to that. Believe you me, it is easy to be like, oh, this is great. It's awesome.
And then
4
a
months
slow
later,
month
you're like,
comes and
oh,
you're
man.
like, what happened? Like, did I do something?
And then you're like, oh yeah, 25% of that's taxes, so that's the thing. You get a big check and you're like, you see that big deposit. You're like, oh, look at that. There's $4,000. You're like, no.
Put that money away for Uncle Sam.
Yeah, that's your business's $4,000, but that ain't yours. And that's going to go a whole bunch of different places before it ends up in your, it's going to be $200 by the time it gets to you.
That part. The joys of freelancing, where it's like
It sure is.
you're your own boss, but you still have to pay your business bills before you pay yourself.
Yes, that was a big lesson for me because I just went into it like, I just like taking pictures, and I just, I really just needed money, but I wanted to do something fun, so like the business part of it was, not easy, because I just wanted a job. Like I just wanted to work in a newspaper. I wanted to be a newspaper staffer forever. That's what I wanted to do. And so I didn't anticipate any of this. Like really, I was like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's been great, but like, it's also had its, slow parts too. But yeah, I thought I was just going to be a newspaper photographer,
And you're here
but
now.
here I know.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for all the gems. And thank you so much for just being able to share your vulnerability, your honesty about your story and your journey. I know that you're going to help so many people on this journey as well. And thank you for giving the advice to me as well. So thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been a pleasure. Has it been an hour? Like, this is wild. This has been a lot of fun.
Flies.
Well, you are really good at this. So, and it shows when it's this easy to talk and, it felt like we were just kind of hanging out in the photo room or something,
That's
This
what
is
I
great.
love. That's always the goal. Awesome. Well, Kevin, again, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. You have a good day, B.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Baby Bump and Business. I hope today's conversation reminded you that you're not alone in this journey and that there's real strength in building something meaningful while showing up for your family. If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate, review, or share it with another parent, creative, or entrepreneur who could use the encouragement. Your support helps this community grow and allows more stories like ours to be heard. To stay connected and get updates on new episodes and real conversations from parents in the creative space, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Baby Bump and Business. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and keep showing up for what matters most.